Good morning. Today we are going to discuss my original bank wrap roll collection, which continues to grow. Here we have just the $1.50 and $1 bank wrapped or shotgun paper wrapped portion of the collection. There are probably close to 100 bank wrapped or shotgun wrapped dime rolls, not pictured here. We're just focusing on the $1/4s and $50 today. I also have tubed rolls, many original tubed rolls with the plastic tubes, the M. Meringer and Sons tubes that go back to the 60s and 70s, and a lot of modern day tubes as well. But you know, I'm rather picky on the rolls that I buy. I try to do my best to make sure that what I buy is original and not assembled, but of course you never do know, and there's a lot of ways that people can crimp and wrap their own rolls nowadays, especially with premiums starting to go a lot higher than what they were even just a year ago. So that said, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, you have to do a lot of homework before you buy anything, would be my first recommendation. I would pull up the articles you can find on Coin World or coin forums like Collector's Universe, even though a lot of those people will snub the idea of roll collectors. A lot of them are very, very pessimistic, saying that everything you buy will be put together, aftermarket, if you will, hand wrapped, loaded rolls, and there's a lot of garbage on eBay. But you can do your due diligence and learn what you're looking for. For instance, just the simple fact of knowing that original bank wrapped rolls came in two different styles. You had uncirculated and you had circulated rolls. Uncirculated rolls would always be a solid roll with every coin being the same year and mint mark, whereas circulated rolls were mostly put together by companies like Brinks and Wells Fargo for transport, where they would just be wrapped up out of cash registers or bank, vaults, that type of thing. The end of the day till from a store, that sort of thing. So there'd be a mishmash of dates and it would be a circulated roll. But knowing the generation of the paper, the simple fact of knowing that striped rolls did not even come into existence until the 70s. So if you're talking about pre-1965, 90% silver, constitutional silver, USA coinage, the fact that the rolls did not have stripes before 1965 would be the first thing to look for. The next thing to look for, obviously, is that the generation matches, the paper generation matches the year of the roll. And again, a little bit of homework, read some articles, ask people who are also into roll collecting. The paper is obviously 60 plus years old, so it needs to look as toned, if you will, as the coins. They need to have patina. They tend to get soft almost. The writing will be faded. If the writing is brand new and the ink is fresh looking and the paper has no creases, chances are it was a assembled roll. Now, like this one, even though you can barely read it, all right, Commerce Trust. This is a 1956 D roll. So happens that I got 6 1956 D rolls. This one, not that one, this, and this, I believe, all came from the same collection about 2 years ago from a Texas collector. And he also had, and I have them still, 5 tubed rolls because the paper wore out. So I have 11 rolls of 1956 D quarters, and they all have the same patina. They all have the same look. Even though the end of the roll coins on these are not as toned as some others would be, they still have a skin. And maybe the camera doesn't pick it up as well as it could. There is a skin. And it depends on the storage conditions. You'll get some rolls that will tone up quite substantially. This 1957 roll has some beautiful original toning. Obviously a tails roll, right? And there's no way to know what's inside it except, you know, obviously that you know, there's no guarantee, right? But, you know, it passes all the sniff tests. It also weighs. In other words, 90% silver coin will weigh heavier than clad. Knowing that each roll is in the area of 250 grams, probably 255 with the paper, will tell you that at a minimum, they're all 90% silver. So there's some very basic pointers. Now, like if you look at this roll, I've always been suspect of this roll. This is a 1943 roll, but I believe this roll to be assembled. I'll tell you why. Number one, this is not the generation from the early 40s. In the early 40s was some of the earliest coin rolling done. Coin rolling really didn't start until the very end of the 30s. So when people talk about rolls of silver dollars like Morgan and Peace dollars, there's no such thing as an original roll. People will take bank bags and roll them, sure. And they were rolled by banks, and but they weren't used for commerce. And I just wouldn't buy any silver dollar rolls, especially the ones on eBay. They're all fake. You've noticed that every single one of them has a CC on the end, and it's just so obvious. But a lot of people fall for it. So anyway, this one, even though it's a 1943, you know, it's just, this one doesn't pass the sniff test. Most of them do though. This is a beautiful 1945 roll. You can see the paper is quite different. It's thicker. It's much thicker, much heavier. And look at the deep toning on it. The elastic I put on there to kind of hold it together, it was starting to open up a little bit, and somebody did open this end. You know, but the integrity of the roll is maintained, right? You try to take coins out of that roll, you'll never get them back in. I know from personal first-hand experience. So even though this coin roll has been opened on one end, I'm very satisfied. They typically would open them, a coin dealer would open them to verify the first couple of coins were all the same date. You know, again, it didn't prove anything, so to speak, but it was what was done. It was traditionally done by coin dealers. I have two of these 51D quarter rolls. And again, you know, it passes all the sniff tests. The paper lines up with the generation. It's all there. And we move on to like the $50 rolls, and most of these are 57 through 63. This is a 54 roll, which is a little bit scarcer. Not necessarily that rare a date, but I mean, look at the toning on that. That thing is just, the camera doesn't really pick up the vibrance of the color, but you can see the cartwheel. That's beautiful. In hand, it's a lot nicer than the terminal toning appearance that it has on the camera. Here we have a 1955 roll. In 1955, BU $50 have always sold at a premium. You know, it's considered one of the key dates of the series, but there are no key dates in the Franklin $50 series. Yeah, the 49S, the 52S are tough, but they're not rare by any means. They're just the hardest ones to get. It looks to me like the original. Somebody bought this roll in January of 1961 for $16.50, so $6.50 over face. Even back in 1961, when silver coin was still circulating and it was only 6 years old. So this roll is probably close to a $500 roll, even though I paid a little more for it because the seller was charging a heavy premium. I wanted the roll, so I paid it. We move on to the next couple, which are 1957 P, which is a better date than the D. But again, the color, even though again, it's not really showing here, this rainbow tone, that's just really, really pretty. You can see the full cartwheel effect. Beautiful. 58s. 5 or 6 of them. We have some tails rolls. That's a 62. I think that's a heads roll. Yep, 62D it's labeled, I believe it. And then we have a bunch of 1963, and they're all from the Bank of Cleveland. I got 13 of them all from the same guy. All 1963p. A lot of heads, tails. That's another thing too. If a guy was selling rolls and every single one of them was heads on one end, tails on the other, I would be suspect of that. They were rolled with the purpose of transport. They were not rolled at the time with the intent that they would be collectible at some point in time. They were done for convenience. So if you think about it on a basic mathematical level, there are 4 combinations. You can have heads, tails, heads, tails, and tails, heads. So 50% of rolls should be heads, tails. 25% should be heads, and the other 25% tails. So if you bought 100 rolls, it should be somewhere in that ratio, right? It shouldn't be 100 to 0 or 98 to 2. You know, it might not be 50, 25, 25, but it should be fairly close. The larger the sample size, the closer to the mean, right? That's pretty basic math. All right, not to be too complicated. These 1948D rolls, there's 2 of them. Were both obviously opened, although I've never messed with them. That tape is quite old. So these are $20 shotgun rolls. There's no bank on them. And 48D, again, a better date, but nothing rare. Both ends were opened, which is rather unfortunate, but I've never gone through them. I don't think I'd be able to get them back in. So these, this is the SS roll? I think this is the only S-Mint roll I have. And it's a mystery. The seller sold it as a mystery. I mean, I'm convinced it's a 54S. But, you know, the seller claims, and the seller was a good guy. You know, I've dealt with him before. I believe his honesty. I don't know if I can capture the S-Mint mark. You know, I think he may have been sold, you know, on the fact that it's unknown, but in all likelihood, it's a 54S roll. And, you know, even though it may not be modern, it may have been made in the late 60s, early 70s, right? So it would have all that toning if it was 50 years old. And someone at the time could take 54S, which is the most common of the S-Mint, and, you know, stack it up. It's just, that is more prevalent today, but it happened back in the day. And of course, we have the last few rolls, which are actual bank wrapped rolls. United California Bank. There's a couple of those. There's Citizens Bank or Citizens Bank of America, American Trust. There's the Citizens. Another taped roll. This is a 1960, which is a sneaky tougher date, the 60p. You look at Gray Sheet and they sell at a premium. Anyway, just thought I'd show a little bit off of the $50 and quarter part of my collection. Hope you got something from the video. Leave comments, ask questions, and if you want to see anything more like this, let me know. Have a great weekend.